business could take place because everybody was involved and engaged in the process. You fast forward to 2012. In 2012, 53 million eligible people in America did not vote. In 2016, when it is that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, still only 53.6% of those who were eligible showed up to the polls. The reality is that the administration who is in office is not in office for all of those who supported, but for all of those who stood on the sidelines. Harry Emerson Fosdick said that democracy is the picture of what ordinary people can do to make the extraordinary happen. We have seen the thousands, now almost 4 million in Georgia, stand in line, in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, the nameless and faceless people who will never have their name on a school or on a street, but participate in the revolutionary act of voting, knowing that this is in fact the residue of the blood of Medgar Evers' driveway, who found himself slain so that we could in fact have that right. This has not been our bloody summer, it's been a death season. That Georgia has lost Joseph Lowry, C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, and so many other unsung heroes who pledged allegiance to a flag that would not wave to them the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so here we find ourselves in the basement of a church, where the overwhelming majority of HBCUs were birthed in the basement of a church. The basement of a church where Black people learned etiquette of how to hold a fork and a knife. The basement of a church where we made our first public address in Christmas programs and Easter plays. In the basement of a church where we organized how to register to vote and trained on how to sit at lunch counters. The basement of a church was always our training ground of how to break the glass ceiling of white supremacy. So now, just 6 days before the election that proof texts everything that we claimed that we stood on, now has to become evidence. Whether it is the Platinum Plan, whether it's Ice Cube's plan, or whether it's the plan at the barbershop, all of it has to take place so that we understand what it is that we're supposed to do. Maynard Jackson, the first Black mayor of Atlanta, said that we can't have permanent friends, we can only have permanent interests. So those who are going to the polls understand that there is a lot at stake in order to make America great for the first time. To make America great for the first time, there's got to be a clear agenda about raising the minimum wage, making sure that there's access to affordable health care, to make sure that there's some punitive repercussion for police officers who find themselves out of order, that there is a reversing of gentrification, that our public schools are able to compete, that our Black businesses have access to capital, that our Black colleges have a strong foundation in order to educate the population that has been least educated in a public school system, to right the wrongs of the miseducation of the Negro. So our coming in the basement today is in fact a tribute to the Underground Railroad, of those who could not find their path to freedom on 20 East or 75 South, but had to go another way in order to get to freedom. We come out of the basement in early voting, and we stand tall on November 3rd, realizing two things: that the church cannot contract prophetic laryngitis, is that we have to cry loud and to spare not. And secondly, to know that there is another generation emerging, understanding that it is now our responsibility to not just take the torch, but to burn down apathy. This is a critical moment for the country, to know that just 48 hours ago, the most least qualified person to ever sit on the Supreme Court was sworn into office. Because those who were on the other side realize it doesn't matter the qualifications unless you're black. Benjamin Elijah May said we've got to run faster or forever be left behind. And so we salute the almost 4 million who have already done early voting, and now we charge those who are now trying to lace up their shoes to stand in line on Tuesday. In the words of Dr. King in Memphis, Tennessee, we've got some difficult days ahead of us. But in spite of that, knowing that we may not have the results on November 3rd, this is where our faith kicks in. That there has got to be a smooth transfer of power, that there has got to be an allegiance to the democratic process, and that we understand that our voice is our vote. Who knew that when it is that James Weldon Johnson wrote the Negro Spiritual in Jacksonville, Florida, he was sending us a cryptic message to 2020 that we have to sing until heaven and earth understand that this has not been an easy path, but something has got to shift. The pandemic gave us evidence that even with our mouths covered with masks, even with our hands laced in gloves, it cannot stop us to speak truth to power, and it cannot prevent us from pulling down the lever for those who represent our interests, our heart, and our future. And so I am challenging particularly young people to please participate in the revolutionary act of voting. Of what it is that we stand tall for in this moment is in fact understanding Sir Walter Raleigh was right. We stand on the shoulders of giants so that we might see further. November 3rd is going to be a new chapter for American history, a new chapter for our community, and the start of a new book for this generation.
Thank you so much. And now it's my joy to present Bishop Thomas Brown, the presiding bishop of the 6th District of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in Georgia. Bishop Brown.
Thank you very much, Bishop Jackson. To Dr. Bryant, Bishop Fan, and to all my brothers and sisters who gathered here in the basement of the Big Bethel Church on this historic, monumental season of voting. It is my joy, invited by Bishop Jackson, to share with us in this day of advocating for the voiceless and giving hope for those who may be discouraged. In my lifetime, I remember when African Americans in the South could not vote. I remember when my own parents cast their votes for the first time in Mississippi. Here we are now in 2020, still faced with this challenge of exercising our birthright as African Americans in America to vote. It's another reason why we all in our community ought to believe in the power of voting. There would not be the kind of avalanche of persons seeking to discourage, to suppress, and to stop voting if voting was not that critical. Voting may not be the only solution, but it is a critical solution to our predicament. And so in many ways, many of us have been traveling through the wilderness of seeking to vote for a number of years. We thought the Historic Voting Rights Act would get us there, but we're yet to reach that promised land. And so I would say to our brothers and sisters, and particularly as Bishop Dr. Bryant indicated, for our young persons in our community, young adults and others who are saying that voting does not matter, I would submit to you that voting does matter, that voting is one of the many ways in which we exercise our theme that Black Lives Matter. To not vote is indeed a cry that I do not matter, my voice does not matter. And so we're encouraging everyone to make sure by tomorrow, no later than November the 3rd, that you vote and that you make sure that your voice is heard, because it is a way in which we declare our lives matter even in 2020. So then, use your own self-confidence, your own self-affirmation, your own self-determination, and cast your vote. And do not allow the conspiracy of those who claim that mail-in voting is something up to trying to seek to undermine the voting process. That's not our issue. It's people in power who are exercising their efforts to make sure that voting is not done. My brothers and sisters, this is our day. This is the day the Lord has made, and we must not just rejoice, but we must vote. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Bishop Brown. And now my friend, Bishop Greg Fan of the Liberty International Church, and somebody who's been in the forefront of all of these social justice efforts before I came to Georgia. Bishop Fan.
Thank you so very much. I am Bishop Greg Fan. I am a man of God. I'm a man of faith, and I do lead and believe by the scriptures. And my late mentor, dear friend, the Reverend Albert E. Love, who we cannot forget, who worked, we call him Mr. Vote, who worked many, many years registering people to vote to make sure that black people were registered to vote. And we registered tons of black people to vote. But when it's election day, black people don't go to the polls. And I say to those individuals that are sitting on the fence today, that's saying, my vote don't count, my vote won't matter. I want you to hear me and hear me good. If you don't vote, then you don't matter to yourself. I said, if you don't vote, you don't matter to yourself. Why register to vote and then don't vote? I believe the soul of America is at stake, and I believe that Americans will do the right thing. I believe that every Georgian and American should be able to jog up and down the street and not be threatened by being gunned down. I believe that this nation has fallen far away from God, and it began to serve greed, hatred, jealousy, envy, selfishness. We must come back to a place of love, and love of God, love of man, love of mankind. And the only way we can do that is we as men and women of God and of faith, we must preach the word and teach the message of love and share the men that we are our brother's keeper. We need to look out for the least, the less, the lost, and the left out. There are many people who really don't even know. A young man came by and we were having a stroll to the polls on Saturday at the church. Young man came by, the Striners and the Masonic brothers out there cooking, and young man, he couldn't be no more than 20, 21 years old. And he rolled by, and this is what he said, Bishop Jackson. He asked the people, he asked the guys, he said, what are we voting for? He didn't even realize what was on the table, what was at stake. Democracy is at stake. Our civil liberties, our freedom is at stake. And the next generation is going to ask us, what do we do to save democracy? We don't need a dictator. We don't need a dictator. Brothers and sisters, I believe that had we had a wiser leader, wouldn't so many people died from this COVID-19. I believe that if everyone would stand up to do what's right, every man and woman of faith who said they love God, that they would stand up and make sure they take their children to the poll. The ones that's 18, everyone 18. I don't care how long we have to stand in line. They're standing in the line, the hell freeze over. Well, we're going to what? Vote. We're going to what? Vote. We're going to what? Vote. Because that's what we're going to do. Because voting is going to bring about a change. God bless you. God bless your family. And God bless America. Thank you, Bishop Jackson.
Bishop Fan, I think you felt your help coming. Let me acknowledge the president of the Atlanta NAACP, Brother Richard Rose. Thank you for being here with us. Let me also acknowledge the representatives to the General Assembly, a good A.M.E., and if things go the way I'm hoping they'll go, possibly the next Speaker of the New Jersey General Assembly, Representative Billy Mitchell. Thank you for being here with us. What did I say? I was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day. Well, the reason I said that, when I came to Georgia, the first thing Billy Mitchell said to me was, "Your dear friend is also my dear friend, Senator Ron Rice." So I've not forgotten that. And let me also say I'm delighted to have with us today the chair of the Council of Islamic American Relations, and we want to get everybody's involvement. Want to say a word? Okay. Thank you for coming to be with us today. Let me also acknowledge the pastor, Big Beth, who opened the church for us today, Dr. John Foster. Now, when Vice President Biden decided to come to Georgia yesterday, folk who had press conferences scheduled for yesterday switched them to today. So there are 5 or 6 press conferences going on at the same time, including one up the street at Ebenezer right now. But I want to, and I'll be sending out a letter to all of the A.M.E. pastors this afternoon, encouraging you to again remind your folk to vote, those who can, by Friday. We are also going to be providing chairs at polling sites on election day so that folk don't have to stand 4 or 5 hours in line. And I'm hoping my colleagues will also send something to their pastors, encouraging them to get their people out to vote. I cannot impress upon you enough how important this election is. I'm happy to hear that New Birth Church is a polling site for this election. We have several A.M.E. churches, Turner Chapel in Marietta. I believe St. Philip in Decatur. We've got 4 or 5 of our churches which are polling sites, but we opened up the possibility of all of our churches to be polling sites, which they have not taken advantage of. Now, before we close, I know you're covering the pool for 211, Fox, and all of them. Any questions from anybody? Any questions from anybody on anything? Yes, Representative Billy Mitchell, you certainly can.
Can I just pose a, shall I just speak out? Speak out. Let me just say. Can you come over a little bit? Yeah, what you said is what I gotta do. We don't mind, Mike. Get the fight. You know, I tell you, this is one of the reasons why I'll be so glad COVID will be over so we can have church. There were several times I felt like getting up and shouting and going on. You know, Zoom and Facebook Live is one thing, but it's nothing like being in person. And so y'all do some praying, because we need to get back. This quick story, you know, my wife used to like Luther Vandross. He was all right. I looked at his videos and his music. One day she pulled me to his concert. And after the end of the concert, I became a Luther Vandross fan. Bought all his music and CDs, everything else. So nothing like being there in person. It changes us. But one of the things I wanted to say is while we got this brain trust here, you know, Stacey Abrams 2 years ago ran for governor. And I can point out, we've listed about 27 ways that she was cheated. And I mean, she was really cheated. Ran against the umpire of the elections. There were some things done, purging hundreds of thousands of voters right before. She was really cheated. But with all of that, you know, she lost by 1.4% of the vote, which came out to 53,000 votes. You know, in DeKalb County, there was 100,000 black men who were registered who did not go to vote. All across the state, there was like 500,000 black folks who were registered and did not vote. Now remember, she only lost by 53,000 votes. Black women all over this country are the #1 demographic in the percentage of them who vote. They vote in the 70 percentile rate. Black men are below 50%. outcry is to black men, let's vote in numbers too big to suppress. If we get our folks, that won't matter all these shenanigans and all those things. For some reason, we've got you black women here, you got to tell your husbands or your spouse, your spice or whatever, to tell them, look, you can't be with me if you don't get up, get out of here and go vote, because that would make the difference.
Thank you so much, Reverend Mitchell. Representative Mitchell, that is very much correct. Yes, sir, Brother Rhodes, Mr. President.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So we are at a crisis in America. Let's be clear. In 1957, a young fifth grader in Memphis asked his mother to take him to the zoo the weekend. She informed him that we'll have to go next summer when I'm out of teaching school is out, and explained that Negroes could only go to the zoo on Thursday. That was me. That ignited the fight, the fire in me that you see every day right now. I want you to know that we have a Supreme Court that wants to take us back to 1950.
That's right.
I'm not going back. I'm not going back before Brown versus Board of Education. I'm not going back before the Montgomery bus boycott, before the march from Selma to Montgomery.
That's right.
Before the freedom rallies. I'm not going back. And we got to understand how interconnected we are. If your neighbor doesn't vote, it affects you. Amen. We got to get everybody out because this is a critical time. Yeah. Somebody said earlier how this is the crisis more severe than any in his lifetime. I echo that. This is where we are. Now, and what the Atlanta NAACP has coordinated 19 counties in this state where 77% of the black voters live. Out of 159. 19 counties contain 77% of the black voters, including Representative Mitchell. He said, yeah, the cab voters, the cab men could have put Stacey Abrams in office, as well as black voters in Fulton County. And so when I saw that before and 2 years ago, I said, hey, we got to figure out how to get all of us together and get this vote out. This is critical. I cannot emphasize enough how critical this is, and we got 7 more days, including today, to make this happen. Atlanta NAACP is coordinating all of these efforts with New Georgia Project, Black Vote Matters, so forth. So if any of these churches are adopting the precinct to say they're going to provide water, snacks, so let us know so we'll know that we can check that one off the list. Because our objective is to check is that every precinct where black folk live, that we're going to make sure those voters are taken care of. So just let us know. We think it's good and bad everything, right? We think one of the good things of this horror in the White House has done is let us know that how critical democracy, saving democracy is for all of us. NAACP membership is up. I think prayer is up. Elections up. And so that's the good part of it. Well, all of these different organizations are collaborating together. We with New Georgia Project, Georgia Coalition of People Center, you name it. We talking, we working together because that's how critical this is for America right today. So for the rest of this week, and we're going to be still out in the streets, still corralling voters, because just in Georgia, for example, I'm going to leave you this now. In Georgia, in 2016, only 48% of black men who were registered to vote, not the ones who weren't registered, only 48% of them went to the vote. And black women were down. Black women usually 70 plus, they were 62% in Georgia. We left 238,000 votes on the table. The winner in 2016 presidential won by about 118,000 votes. You do the math. It's in our hands. If it's in our hands, let's implement, let's execute, let's fix this. We can do it together. Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much. And welcome, my brother.
Good morning, everyone. I was very hesitant. I said, let the elders speak first, and then I'll come up and speak. I do want to address, and it's a blessing to be here at Big Bethel. I'm very honored to be here with Bishop Jackson and everybody here. I do want to address something that I've been dealing with, being a young man and dealing with a young crowd. As the bishop mentioned, I serve as the executive director for the Council on American Islamic Relations. We're the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization in the country. And right now we're mobilizing the community. We've been asking to go out to the polls for early voting. We've seen a good turnout, but we're still pushing. But there has been one thing that keeps coming up over and over again in our conversations, and that's, come on, but we need better, we need better candidates. Well, you're going to wait for the rest of your life. Especially young brothers and sisters come up to me, they're like, but we need somebody better. If you look at scripture, no prophet has ever said, wishing to have better rulership. They engaged. If they were waiting, well, they would have been left waiting. This is a big problem within, this is just an excuse to not engage. And by us not engaging, we're insulting the legacy of every single man, woman, young and old that has walked and treaded this path. So it's extremely important for us not to give excuses in saying that we want the perfect candidate, the perfect person to run. That'll never happen. Because as human beings, we're not perfect. And waiting for perfection is just a big excuse for us, right? So it's important for us to understand that we have to engage with the system that God has given us to overcome the challenge that God has given us, because he has given us the tools to overcome the challenges that he has put in front of us. And there's something divine about being a minority. Yes, I said there's something divine about being a minority. If you look at scripture, whether it's the Bible or the Quran or any other scripture, it's always the minorities that have overcome. Because God works through minorities. God works through minorities. And for the young crowd, my brothers and sisters, it's extremely important to understand that God works through black and brown bodies. Yes, God works through minorities. So there's something divine about being a minority and being able to pull the divine assistance from God. And we have to take advantage of this, right? So again, it's an honor to be here. I just wanted to share that because it's something that keeps coming up over and over again about people saying, I just want the perfect person. There isn't one. There isn't one. So I ask God to enable us to go out to the polls, to engage our communities. And again, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother. You said something today. Yes, sir. And I know, brother, it's time for us to go to work. We're going to leave here and go to work. Thank you so much. Let me thank all the A.M.E preachers who came in here today. Thank you so much. Now let's go to work. My executive assistant, Ms. Brown, thank you. Reverend Will Thomas, let's go to work. Thank you.